Tonight we're stepping into a world where the darkest corners of human nature collide with forces we can't quite explain. This episode is all about true crime cases that twist into the supernatural. Murders, trials, and hauntings where the line between evil deeds and otherworldly influence blurs. We're diving into 4 chilling tales, the infamous Amityville Horror, Arne Cheyenne Johnson's Devil Made Me Do It trial, the unsolved Villisca Axe Murders, and the Smurl family's demonic ordeal. These aren't just campfire stories, they're real cases that left investigators, families, and entire communities grappling with questions no one can fully answer. A man guns down his family, and the house he leaves behind becomes a nightmare of voices and apparitions. A brutal stabbing leads to a courtroom defense of demonic possession. An axe-wielding killer vanishes, but the echoes of his victims linger in a cursed home. A family fights an unseen tormentor for 15 years, claiming it's hell-bent on their destruction. We've got the gritty details, we've got court records, witness accounts, and expert takes from cops, paranormal investigators, and skeptics alike. Is this just human horror with a spooky twist, or could something truly sinister be at play? Let's find out together. We'll see you on the inside. You are now entering the realm of the freaky deaky. An unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality. About time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically. Folks, welcome back to the Freaky Deaky. To start it off, Holler Baby is now available. We have set up an account. Buy a personal shout out on the show for as little as $9 or give your business a boost with a $29 ad read. Visit holler.baby/thefreakydeaky to get yours today. No account sign up is required. Simply visit holler.baby/thefreakydeaky and make Christian say weird things for $9. Just be sure to specify who you want to read the shout out when you submit it. And this is something I've been wanting to set up for a while. I finally had a reminder because I was listening to a podcast that also does Holler Baby shout-outs, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I meant to set that up 6 years ago. So here we are. If you guys want to help support the show, or if you're maybe a small business owner that wants to potentially boost your business by advertising to our listener base, $29 is a steal. I can tell you that as someone that has done a bit of advertising in the past. You are not going to find anything better than that. If you want to wish a friend or a listener a happy birthday, or even just comment on an episode or make Christian say weird things, it's about $9. So, holler.baby/thefreakydeaky. With that aside, I'm probably going to be mentioning that a couple times over the next few episodes because I usually forget things after I set them up and I'm trying to remember it. Memory. It's beautiful. Not that I would know these days, but that's fine. Folks, we are diving into some stories that you've probably actually heard before, but we haven't really touched on here in the 5 years we've been doing this podcast. And I was like, you know what? I think it's time. So we're dabbling a bit into true crime, but all of these true crime cases actually have a supernatural twist to them. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. Before we do, be sure to follow us wherever you are on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod. It truly does help us get the word out. Same with reviewing the show. If you're a fan of what you hear and you've been kind of lingering in the shadows for the last 5 years, now's your chance. Rate the show 5 stars wherever you're listening. It does wonders. Christian, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful today.
This is your 3rd time coming over today.
That is. Yeah, it is.
It's like 15-minute drive or so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a weird week.
It's been like an hour and a half of just you driving to and from this house in this one day.
Yeah, my grandson's here. Doesn't bother me.
That is true. He is here. Fantastic. Well, I don't think I have anything else to say. I've said review the show. I've talked about the social medias. I can inform you that we have absolutely dope merch available at thefreakydeaky.com.
Did I see kids merch?
No. You saw my son rocking a t-shirt, but that's because he's crew. You know, he's part of the crew. So we don't actually have children's t-shirts available.
I was wondering.
I don't know why his backside looks like Joe Rogan in that t-shirt, though. I think it's like a fitted t-shirt for toddlers, which is really weird. But yeah, I took a picture of the back graphic and I was like, is that Joe Rogan? Turns out it was my son the whole time.
No, he has hair.
That's true. We're going to start things off here with something that everyone at this point in time should be familiar with, and that is the Amityville Horror.
Never heard of it.
You liar.
I wasn't allowed to watch that movie when I was young.
Didn't that movie come out when you were old?
No, I was probably like 6 or 7.
Oh, you're talking about the original. I'm thinking Ryan Reynolds.
He did one?
Have you not seen the...
I feel like I saw it.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
It was pretty good. I liked it. I mean, I like pretty much anything Ryan Reynolds, so checks all the boxes for me. A couple of jump scares in that movie for sure, but probably pales in comparison to actually experiencing it firsthand, or if it happened. That's a big if, I know.
I'm going to wait till the end to comment.
So let's start with a name that's practically synonymous with the supernatural, and that's Amityville. It begins on November 13th, 1974, in a Dutch colonial house at 112 Ocean Avenue. Wow, yellow card. Long
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, isn't there a song about that?
Yeah. Wow, that brings me back to 2003 or something. Isn't that great? Had a lot of emotional nights with that album. It's fine. 112 Ocean Avenue, Long Island, New York. Ronald DeFeo Jr., a 23-year-old with a troubled past, grabs a .35 Marlin rifle and in the dead of night, murders his entire family. Sorry, YouTube. His parents, Ronald Sr. and Luis, and his 4 siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. 6 shots, 6 bodies, all found face down in their beds as if they never stirred. DeFeo's story shifted. He claimed it was self-defense, then a mob hit, before confessing he'd acted alone. Convicted of second-degree murder, he's still behind bars today, sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms. But the real mystery begins a year later, when the house finds new tenants, George and Kathy Lutz, and their 3 kids. The Lutzes moved in on December 18, 1975, knowing the property's grim history, but drawn by its bargain price of $80,000. Well, I mean, at that point, you kind of gotta go for it, you know? For a 5-bedroom home with a boathouse, yeah, 80
What
grand,
year?
75.
Damn, that house would probably be super expensive nowadays if it wasn't haunted.
If inflation didn't exist and it was still $80,000, I would move into that haunted house, yeah.
I would buy that haunted house. I wouldn't move into it.
You got to move in, test the waters, dip your little pinky toe in, be like, am I going to be haunted as well?
No.
Well, you're just going to flat out be like, I'm in.
Who wants to rent the haunted house? That's what I'd buy that place and just rent it out.
There you go. Paranormal investigators showing up every other night with their lights and their blinking things and their alarms.
That would be like Airbnb for ghost hunters.
ScareBNB. You're welcome. Anyway, they lasted 28 days. What drove them out? They claimed the house was alive with malevolence. George described waking every night at 3:15 a.m., the exact time of the murders, plagued by an urge to check the boathouse. Kathy saw a red-eyed figure staring from her daughter's bedroom window. Their 5-year-old Missy spoke of an imaginary friend named Jody, a pig-like entity who told her secrets. Then came the physical stuff. Green slime oozing from the walls, doors slamming, and George waking to find Kathy levitating above their bed. One night, he said a hooded figure pointed at him silently before vanishing. That's kind of creepy. I've had that happen. On January 14th, 1976, they fled, leaving their belongings behind, insisting they'd escaped a demonic force. The terror didn't stop with their exit. George Lutz later recounted to the New York Times in 1979 how, even after leaving, he felt pursued by an oppressive presence, as if the house's malice had latched onto them. Kathy described nightmares persisting for months, vivid visions of the red-eyed figure now looming over her in new surroundings. The family sought out Father Ray Pecoraro.
I don't understand why you struggle with Italian names.
I know, you'd think it'd come naturally for me. Maybe I just need to do the accent. That's probably what it is.
Please don't.
Okay, well, I'm going to struggle. Father Ray Pecoraro. You guys know who he is. Why am I trying so hard? A Catholic priest who'd blessed the house days after they moved in, only to hear a disembodied voice scream, "Get out," as he sprinkled holy water, an incident he later confirmed under oath during a 1979 lawsuit against the Lutz's book publishers. The priest's hands reportedly blistered after the encounter, a detail he shared with Ed Warren during their investigation, reinforcing the belief that something unholy lingered at 112 Ocean Avenue. Now we get to our favorite paranormal folks, the Warrens, of course. The Warrens' 1976 visit cemented the house's legend. Ed Warren, a self-styled demonologist, described an overwhelming psychic pressure that hit him the moment he entered, a sensation he likened to walking through a wall of hate. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, pinpointed the basement as the epicenter, claiming she saw shadowy figures reenacting the murders in a psychic vision. Their team spent hours in the house using infrared cameras and audio recorders capturing that eerie photo of a wide-eyed boy peering from the doorway, later dubbed the Amityville Ghost Boy. Lacking some creativity in their titling, but that's fine. The image taken when no children were present fueled believers' conviction that the DeFeo killings had left a spiritual scar, a wound that bled into the Lutz's lives. Even the family's dog, Harry, reportedly went berserk near the boathouse, howling and refusing to approach it, as if sensing what George felt at 3:15 a.m. The story exploded with Jay Anson's 1977 book, The Amityville Horror, a bestseller that spawned movies and endless debate. The Lutzes stuck to their tail in interviews, like one with Good Housekeeping in 1977, where Kathy said, quote, "It wasn't just fear, it was like the house hated us." Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren visited 1976, snapping a now famous photo of a ghostly boy in a doorway. Ed claimed he felt a demonic presence so strong it left him shaken, while Lauren sensed a psychic residue tied to the murders. But skeptics fired back. Researcher Joe Nickel, and didn't we talk about him recently?
Yes. I don't remember what, though.
Okay, I was like, hopefully you remember what it was, because I know he came up in the past.
You're the one that remembers stuff on this podcast, not me.
I remember very weird sentences or like really tiny conversations and tangents. Never the actual, I'll remember episode numbers, but I don't remember the juicy bits, you know? So researcher Joe Nickel, in a 2003 Skeptical Inquirer piece, argued the Lutzes exaggerated for profit. The slime was likely leaky plumbing, gross. The levitation, a nightmare fueled by stress. DeFeo's lawyer, William Weber, even admitted in 1979 he'd concocted parts of the story with the Lutzes over, quote, a few bottles of wine.
Wait, I thought he was in prison.
DeFeo's lawyer, William Webb.
Oh, he was the one that concocted it.
Yeah, with the Lutzes.
Lawyers.
Allegedly.
Lawyers, man.
Solicitors, am I right? The rest of the world? Anyway. To help DeFeo's appeal, though the Lutzes denied it. Yet the believers hold firm. The consistency of the Lutzes' accounts, repeated in sworn affidavits and polygraph tests they passed in 1979, lends weight to their claims.
It does not.
Okay, well, there's another skeptic chiming in. Neighbors reported oddities too. One told Newsday in 1976 of hearing footsteps from the empty house after the Lutzes fled, while another saw lights flicker inexplicably. How do you hear footsteps from inside if you're not inside the house?
Maybe hardwood floors?
Maybe. That's some echoey walls you got there, my friend, if that's the case.
Bad craftsmanship.
Very poor acoustics. But that house did look dope. It looks creepy now, but it's pretty solid build.
No, man. I grew up...
Is it because the eye?
I grew up in fear of that house.
Because the eyeball windows? It looks like it's just staring at you?
I just heard the story from kids at school because I wasn't allowed to watch the movie.
Classic.
And it was, for years, it scared me.
As it should.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, while another saw lights flicker inexplicably, the Warrens' photo remains a haunting artifact, its subject's eyes too lifelike for dust or lens tricks, believers argue. Skeptics point to the house's quiet years under later owners, but the Lutz's visceral terror, backed by the Warrens' findings, suggests something real drove them out, something tied to DeFeo's blood-soaked night. The house itself adds intrigue. Built in 1927, it sits on land once used by the Shinnecock tribe.
Of course it does.
Classic. I'm glad I pronounced that one right?
Sounds right.
It's either that or...
You just go with it.
Yeah. You know, it's either that or...
We're not the best
Satan's penis.
Yeah, we're not the best with
fine.
Different nicknames from...
You know, it's fine. Not for burials, as some claim, but still steeped in local lore. Subsequent owners reported no hauntings, though one, Jim Cromartie, told Newsday in 1979 he'd heard odd noises he chalked up to old pipes. Today, it's a private residence. Its iconic quarter-moon windows altered to dodge gawkers. Was it a hoax born of trauma and greed, or did something linger after DeFeo's rampage? The debate rages on, fueled by those grainy Warren photos and the Lutz's unwavering accounts. What do you think happened at Amityville? Were the Lutzes terrorized by a real demonic force, or was it all a clever cash grab built on a tragic crime? For some odd reason, I remember reading in the past year or so that it was demolished. Or did I read that it got purchased? Do you remember anything about that house coming up? I feel like it was recently, like within the last couple of years. But yeah, crazy story. That's actually probably the house that got me super into haunted houses, was watching that Ryan Reynolds movie after learning about the craziness that took place there.
I feel like I've seen that one, but I don't remember it.
Remember?
I mean, I don't even really remember the original. It's been so long since I've seen that movie, but
yeah.
I was a terrified child, so I didn't watch any of that kind of stuff till I was a teenager.
That's when rebellion took over.
And then I was instantly regretting that decision.
That happens.
But now I'm okay.
Yeah, it still happens to me. I'm a grown-ass man.
The devil doesn't exist, so I'm not scared anymore.
You can still be scared of other things. Taxes, you know?
There are things I'm afraid of.
The cold, clammy hands of death. Oh, yeah.
It's coming for me.
Can hear it in the distance.
Hopefully not. I can't hear.
That's true. Yeah. Plus side. Can't hear it coming. Got to be a surprise. Either way you slice it. I know it's had a lot of back and forth, I guess, on the skepticism of that story versus the quote unquote evidence for that story taking place. I think if you've murdered your entire family in a house, I think there's going to be some ghosts, you know, some unruly spiritual activity.
I think there's going to be some darkness in however that manifests.
Precisely.
A good, like in this case, I'm one that's kind of believes that this has been debunked a lot pretty well.
Yeah.
But also destroying a family is going to leave a mark in time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So maybe the Lutzes, since they were the only ones to really experience anything after that, according to them, maybe they're just more sensitive to that darkness. Maybe they're like the type of person that nowadays would see the Hat Man or whatever, you know? Some people just see things differently. Maybe a normal person like me or just, you know, maybe they're normal too. I'm not saying they're not, but they just can see into another dimension that most of us can, or that I can't really see. So maybe there's something there. I don't think it's demonic. And I
mean, darkness, even whether you label it like demons or whatever, is still like an oppressive force that you feel, right? Like it's still something that is almost tangible.
And in some cases, it can push people into a dark place.
I believe that to be true.
Certain people don't need much or need a certain type of push, and all of a sudden they're in a dark place, and however that manifests, you know, there's all kinds of darkness that we all suffer through in our lives, and
isn't that nice?
Some people suffer more than others.
Hell yeah, we do. Hell yeah. That's fine. I don't know. What do you guys think? Amityville, I'm sure there's several people out there that are like 100% hoax, blah, blah. I think it could be a mix. I think they could spruce up some of the stories to, you know, sell books, but at the same time,
it was a great story. True or not, it was, you know, I remember how that original movie affected, you know, the people that saw it around me.
Some might say that the story itself is iconic, that it's been grounded in, you know, paranormal lore at this point.
I wonder if it got extra push because of The Exorcist, though. Because The Exorcist kind of changed the way people saw film. And what, you know, the kind of terror they wanted when they saw a film. It wasn't like the cheesy pre-70s style scary movies.
It was like, I genuinely want to fear for my life when I'm trying to sleep tonight.
Right. And I wonder if that kind of helped provide the Amityville story to kind of blow up and become big enough to make a money-making movie out of it in the 70s.
Hell yeah. Now we're talking.
And then a remake.
And an even better movie, some would say, with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, I don't remember who acted in the original one, but I don't really go back in time and watch movies from the 70s and before.
Well, nobody goes back in time, first of all, Christian, but
we don't know that.
That is true, actually. There's several stories I've heard recently where I'm like, maybe it's possible, but who knows? That's not the episode for this. Now let's head to Brookfield, Connecticut for a case that made legal history. And this is one everyone should be familiar with. It's February 16th, 1981, and 19-year-old Arne Cheyenne Johnson is arguing with his landlord, Alan Bono, outside a dog kennel where Johnson worked. Tempers flare and Johnson stabs Bono multiple times with a pocket knife.
Bono went on to make music.
Bono, 40, bleeds out on the scene. The town's first recorded murder. Johnson walks off dazed and is arrested hours later, claiming he doesn't remember the attack. What sounds like a straightforward crime takes a wild turn when he pleads not guilty by reason of demonic possession, kicking off the "devil made me do it" trial, the first U.S. case to use the supernatural as a defense.
What year was this?
79, I believe? No, 81. The backstory starts months earlier in July 1980. Johnson's fiancée, Debbie Glatzel, lived with her family in a rental house where her 11-year-old brother, David, began acting strange. Night terrors, visions of a, quote, man with black eyes. What's that man doing with black eyes? That's fine. And scratches appearing on his body. The Glatzels called in Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Of course.
God, we just can't get rid of these people. Who declared...
Oh, we got rid of them.
Oh. A little dark, but all right. Who declared David possessed by multiple demons. During an exorcism unsanctioned by the Catholic Church, mind you, Johnson, a devout Catholic himself, taunted the entity, daring it to take me instead. The Warrens later said this opened the door. Weeks later, Johnson started growling, convulsing, and blacking out. Debbie told police he'd stare blankly for hours, once snarling like an animal before snapping out of it. Then came Bono's death, which Johnson's lawyer, Martin Minella, argued wasn't murder, but the act of a demon inside of him. The Glatzel family's ordeal painted a chilling picture. David's behavior grew so erratic, hissing, reciting Bible verses backward. That's kind of an art form, if you think about it. That's a talent. And attacking his siblings, that his parents kept him home from school, fearing for his safety and others. During one of the Warrens' visits, recorded on audio later, aired in a 1981 Real People TV segment.
Oh, wow.
That's a throwback. David's voice dropped to a guttural growl, shouting threats in a tone his family swore wasn't his own. Lorraine Warren claimed she saw a black mist rise from David during the exorcism, a moment she said marked the transfer to Johnson. Debbie, in a 1981 interview with the Hartford Courant, described Arnie's decline, his once warm eyes turning cold and dead, his hands trembling uncontrollably as if fighting an unseen force. By the time of the murder, she insisted he wasn't the man she'd known. The Warrens' involvement deepened the supernatural narrative. Ed, who'd studied demonology for decades, told the court he'd witnessed Johnson lift a table with one hand during a blackout episode, strength he deemed inhuman. Lorraine's psychic impressions pointed to a, quote, legion of entities, a claim she reiterated in a 1981 Connecticut magazine feature where she said the house itself felt tainted by a presence predating the Glatzels. The family's priest, Father Nicholas Grosso, refused an official exorcism but privately blessed the home, later admitting to the New York Times he'd felt an unnatural chill there. Johnson's sister, Wanda, told police she'd seen him claw at the air days before the killing, muttering about, quote, something inside trying to break free. Details that aligned with the Warrens' timeline of possession. The trial began October 28, 1981 in Danbury Superior Court. Minella brought in the Warrens as witnesses who testified about the exorcism and Johnson's transformation. Ed claiming he'd seen a dark force leave David and enter Arnie. Debbie's mother, Judy, told the jury her son-in-law had been a gentle guy until that summer. Prosecutors scoffed, calling it a, quote, Hollywood defense. Judge Robert Callahan agreed, barring possession testimony as unscientific, forcing Minella to pivot to self-defense. Court transcripts showed Johnson admitting he'd argued with Bono over rent, but he couldn't explain the knife. On November 24, 1981, the jury convicted him of first-degree manslaughter, not murder, sentencing him to 10 to 20 years. He served 5. So believers see the lighter side as a nod to the extraordinary circumstances. Juries later told the Washington Post they'd debate Johnson's trance-like state during the stabbing, some wondering if stress alone could explain it. The Warrens pointed to physical evidence, scratches on Johnson's arms mirroring David's, appearing without cause. Locals added fuel. Brookfield residents reported hearing howls from the Glatzel house during the exorcism, and one neighbor saw Johnson staggering home post-murder, his shirt torn as if clawed. Skeptics like Michael Caneo argue it was a mental collapse, but the consistency of eyewitness accounts and the Warrens' documented sessions tilt towards something darker at play. The Warrens doubled down, with Lorraine telling People in 1981...
The magazine, right?
The magazine, yeah. She was just out there telling people, saying the courts can't ignore the spiritual forever.
Mm-hmm.
Skeptics, like psychologist Michael Caneo from moments ago, in his 2001 book, American Exorcism, called it a mix of suggestion and mental breakdown. Johnson buckling under stress, perhaps psychosis, amplified by the Warrens' influence. No official exorcism records exist, and police found no hard evidence of possession, just a bloody knife and a dead man. Still, locals whisper about the case. Some swear they saw Johnson's eyes go black that day. It's a tale that pits faith against law, leaving us to wonder where the real evil lay. So was Arne Johnson truly possessed, or was this just a desperate defense for a moment of rage?
What do you think?
I don't know. Was this the Conjuring movie that came out recently, right? The Devil Made Me Do It? Was it Conjuring, or am I thinking of the other one?
I just know, I was going to ask you if that line was in one of the movies. I felt like it was The Nun, the second Nun.
The Devil Made Me Do It?
Or no. There was a movie called
it's the I think it's the most recent Conjuring.
Yeah, so you're
movie.
right. It
was about this case.
That one wasn't as good as the other movies in that.
Exactly. So that's why I don't really remember my vision of this story.
Right.
Do I think it was demonic possession? Probably not. I think that people snap sometimes, you know?
I feel like some of the description of prior to the event almost sounded like schizophrenia in some way.
It could be. And that's a great call forward to an episode that I finally finished.
Nice.
Which is going to be episode 250, I believe. We kind of talked about it in the past, doing the spiritual side of schizophrenia. And I've given people enough time to weigh in on that. It's been months. I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this episode. If you'd be down to hear that, then let me know. And I've gotten a handful of messages. People have commented in the Facebook group a few months back, I think. And so I finally did it. And I'm excited to share it with you guys. And it's going to be episode 250. Buckle up for that. Is a wild ride, I'll say that. But getting back to Arne Johnson.
Have you ever seen somebody's eyes go black?
No, but I'm one part removed from it. I know people that have seen it personally.
I'm going to say that, like, I think people believe that people's eyes go black, but I don't know if it's necessarily that, or you can just tell the change sometimes when you...
Like their pupils just dilate or something like that, or some kind of physical change, or is it...
They just...
a vibe check.
Look crazy for a second. Like, I've seen it in hockey
crazy people. Yeah.
When someone snaps in hockey, it's
like, all right, it's time.
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's the nicest guy in the world, and then all of a sudden something happens and they look like a crazy person for a moment.
They do be like that.
And then, one time when I was reffing a hockey game, I got bit.
You got bit?
Yeah, by a guy.
The guy had rabies.
Actually, I had to get rabies shots, but
I believe
not rabies shots. I think I got tetanus, and I just was watched to make sure.
Weird.
And the guy that bit me was a friend.
That's a strange story.
He was trying to bite the other guy that he was fighting with. I was just trying to break up the fight, and he bit
the fact that he was trying to bite anyone
in the face.
In the face is
so.
Wow,
not maybe Ed and Lorraine needed to talk to Jerry there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do get a little bit of suspicion whenever Ed and Lorraine show up into stories. Like we've talked about this. I believe they were truly passionate about this stuff, but at what point do you draw a line and say, okay, this is 100% now just a cash grab? Like you're specifically going after the fame and notoriety of this instead of actually trying to help people.
It's hard to say at this point if they were actually trying to help people. I mean, some of the stuff I've looked into, I've read, I've known about them. They seem like they were decent people. I mean, I'm not going to knock them for making money off of their work.
Who doesn't? We want to do that, right? We would love this podcast to blow up.
I'm not going to generally knock them. I don't believe in everything that they said happened. In this case, I don't feel like there's a devil involved. I feel like there's a mental issue happening. I would be curious to see what happened after the guy got out of prison, and if he didn't have these issues, if he was diagnosed maybe at some point with some kind of mental issues. And that was a different time back then, too, where that stuff wasn't talked about, dealt with.
True.
You weren't being medicated. Maybe you could be put in an institution, but...
But would that change your opinion of this if he got out of prison and never did anything again? Like if he was just a clean cut, down the straight and narrow?
It wouldn't change my opinion. It'd be fascinating to see and maybe ponder why that is.
Yeah, because if it's a mental condition, you don't just snap out of that, right?
Here's something as you were going through the story and thinking about Lorraine, like maybe you can see a mentally unstable person. Maybe there is something around him that certain people can read.
Like the psychic aspect, like
right.
Being able to, like,
like some people say they can read auras, and if you really talk to them, you're kind of convinced they're seeing something. Maybe it's something like that, or
it could even just be as simple as like a feeling that usually ends up being right. Like where you're just like, I don't know, I felt this weird way, and then turned out this person was a killer.
Sometimes I wonder too, because we talk about different stories where people see things that are just supernatural, and maybe they're not really seeing it, but they're picking up on something there, something affecting the environment. And because our brain works to see and understand what we're feeling and doing and stuff like that, maybe it projects this image there.
Yeah.
Like I think we've talked about it before. Sometimes you're going to see what you understand in certain situations. If it's just something beyond the realm of possibility, you won't always see it exactly how it really is. Like, the only thing I could say is like the story of the actual stories of what an angel looks like, and the stories that came out later about the beautiful angels, and maybe that's kind of a similar thing where
Let's show ourselves as something that doesn't make him crap his pants.
well, maybe they still show themselves that way, but we have a protection built into our brain that helps us not, because that's not going to help us survive, and our brain's made to help us survive. If we see something hideous that freezes us, that's not very helpful to the species.
Maybe.
That makes sense. So it just made me think about maybe psychics can see that, and their interpretation means a lot. Like,
yeah, I don't necessarily call it like psychic or anything like that, but I do think, and I honestly think you're going to get a kick out of the Schizophrenia episode because it touches more on dimension than it does space and time, I guess you could say.
When you talk to somebody that's in the middle of that,
which I have,
it's very believable.
Yeah. I was on a lunch break at my job at McDonald's in California City, was approached by a man, and it was an interesting conversation.
I've had a few of them through my years. I mean, even recently we have a customer that comes in and tells me he used to work for the Secret Service. And then he tells me other things, and he believes it.
He believes it, but you do not?
No. I see him walking around town, too.
Okay, well.
He's in that kind of a state.
Gotcha. Homeless, so, you could have just said that.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, well, a lot of times those two things are connected, but he believes it, and when he tells you the story, you can almost believe some of the stuff because he's so passionate, and you don't feel he's lying.
What if he's not? Ooh.
I mean, that's always a possibility, too.
Yeah, it might be slim, but that's always a possibility.
You never know what's going on with people.
That's very true. Next, we are traveling to Villisca, Iowa, a sleepy farm town turned infamous on June 10th, 1912. That night, someone crept into the Moore family home and, with an axe, slaughtered 8 people. Should I have put a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode? Nah, we don't do that anymore. Hey, guess what? It's a freaky podcast, all right? It's literally in the name.
I think you should pay attention when you use the M word so you can kind of garble it a little bit, though. You should have a button on. You should just have a button whenever that word comes up. You hit it and it's a little garbled.
Now, I believe that at some point Google is going to stop being a little bitch ass, and they're going to be like, you're going to be able to say words that, you know, like murder and kill and death.
That's weird.
That shouldn't be something that a gigantic video platform like demonetizes you for.
That is kind of weird,
right? Like with the entirety of true crime, you telling me not a single one of those major podcasts say murder?
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Sometimes we go too far.
We're being suppressed. Google, hey, I'm watching you. Anyway.
I always forget Google owns YouTube.
Yeah. Well, you can tell because of how oppressive it is, Google.
I have no problem with it.
Joke.
It's just some of the stuff's dumb.
You can find us over at Rumble with our 2 subscribers. With the 2 people that watch Rumble. You like that? Someone's going to message me back. Rumble's actually pretty great, Scott.
What's Rumble? I'm just joking. I know what it is.
Yeah, don't get them started. Anyway, that night, someone crept into the Moore house. I'm going to say it again. Slaughtered 8 people. Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 kids, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul.
So a lot of those names are really hideous names, so that could be the cause of this.
Wow. Those were children. And 2 overnight guests, sisters Lena and Ina Stillinger. The killer struck each victim in the head, some so brutally their skulls were unrecognizable. Yeah.
You don't have to go that far, man.
Can you imagine if we did a true crime podcast?
Move on.
This would be like every episode. If we did exclusively true crime, we'd just be like, yeah, so anyway, their skulls were beaten in and battered. It's fine.
There's more eloquent words you could use to describe that.
When you're describing a murder?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be elegant or
eloquent?
Eloquent with it? I don't think so. Gotta be dark.
That's how we like it here.
The killer struck every victim in the head. Oh, I'm not going to repeat that. Made Christian a little queasy.
You're traumatizing me, man.
Trauma. Blood soaked the beds, the walls, even the ceiling. By morning, a neighbor found the carnage and the case remains unsolved over a century later. But the house hasn't stayed quiet. Reports of ghostly cries, moving objects, and shadowy figures have made it a paranormal hotspot. The night's horror unfolded with eerie precision. The Moores had returned from a church event around 9:30 p.m., the Stillinger girls in tow after their parents allowed them to stay over.
A lot of church involved here.
Very true.
In this episode.
By midnight, the house was dark, its occupants asleep until the killer struck. Autopsies revealed Josiah took the worst of it, his face hacked beyond recognition, while Lena showed defensive wounds, suggesting she'd woken and fought back.
Which is
usually what happens when
they normally go for the guy.
That's true. Why is that? Is it because he's so beefy and masculine?
To take out the biggest threat.
Oh, you saying that women aren't capable, Christian?
No, I'm saying that's traditionally when a killer targets someone like that.
Wow, no, yeah, I got you. Plain as day, weak and defenseless. I got you. It's fine. Everyone get Christian, all right?
That's not what I said, but everybody knows it.
Yeah, everyone does know it. It's fine. Ladies, don't worry. You got Christian and myself here to keep you safe, you know? Just kidding. It's fine.
I'm going to be at church. You can keep yourself safe.
Haha. The killer locked the doors behind them, draped cloths over windows, and left a bowl of bloody water in the kitchen. Signs of a methodical mind. Sheriff Wilkerson, in a 1912 Des Moines Register report, noted the axe blows were so forceful they'd embedded chips of bone in the ceiling, a detail that haunts Villisca's collective memory. Yes.
How'd it get in the ceiling?
You know what?
Were they hitting the ceiling?
It was that one detail that reminded me of like a documentary or a podcast I'd listened to on this particular thing, because that was so wild to hear. Like, this dude is swinging so hard, so intense that the pieces of the skull will fly up and get stuck into the ceiling. Like, that's some pretty intense swinging.
I wonder if that happens more often than we know about then.
Well, if it does, then the cops sure aren't that great at...
I'm not very familiar with axe murders, but maybe...
I am super familiar with... No. Yeah, nobody knows. You tell us, are you a detective out there? Give us your thoughts. How did the skull end up in the ceiling, damn it?
And did it happen with Lizzie Borden?
Yeah, probably.
That would go back to our female thing we were just talking about.
Oh, so it turns out that they are capable, huh?
Yeah, she
Maybe
was.
Just a little bit, yeah. Someone's going to hear this and think we're being wildly sexist without knowing that our specific level of sarcasm is, and that's fine. You can comment. I'm just going to delete it, I
mean, if people
have the power.
I know people don't get sarcasm anymore.
It really is sad because I speak exclusively in sarcasm 90% of the time.
I think I do a lot too. And what I say here is tame to some of the stuff I say.
Yeah. What I say is definitely, I think we both kind of, take it down a notch. So if you're offended by anything we say on this podcast,
come work with me. See how bad it can get. Proof of Satan.
That kind of checks out,
That's how you get things embedded in the ceiling that are from somebody's skull.
Very true. So yeah, they noted that the axe blows were so forceful they embedded chips of bone in the ceiling, a detail that haunts Villisca's collective memory. The town reeled as investigators scrambled. A posse of locals searched barns and fields while Pinkerton detectives were hired to chase leads.
Oh yeah, this was the early 1900s. I was like, Pinkerton? Those murderers?
Classic. Suspect Andrew Sawyer, a transient laborer, was spotted in a nearby town with blood on his clothes, claiming it was from a fight. He had no alibi, but no hard evidence tied him to the scene. What kind of evidence did you get if it wasn't like his government ID? Back then? Come on.
Well, they didn't need evidence back then.
They're just like, this guy looks oddly suspicious.
Yep.
And his melanin's a little darker than the rest of us.
Was it?
Just kidding. That's we're not here to. That's lowbrow.
Yeah,
Christian, let's be honest. That's lowbrow humor for this podcast.
I expect more from you, man.
You should. It's been a long day. So he was claiming it was from a fight, and he had no alibi, but no hard evidence tied him to the scene. Preacher George Kelly, a known eccentric, confessed in 1917, describing the murders in detail, only to retract it, saying he'd been coerced by police. You did it, preacher man. Like, how does that happen? It's fine. His first trial ended in a hung jury.
Well, whose trial?
And all that. The George Kelly's.
Okay.
So he had a hung jury. But what do they decide? No, it's the second in acquittal, leaving doubts. Frank Jones, a wealthy businessman and Josiah's rival, faced whispers of hiring a hitman, but his prominence shielded him from serious scrutiny. Okay, so it was him. The case's mishandling.
He got Yellowstoned.
Wow, I got hella stoned. That could be a rap lyric. Scott, write that down. Hundreds of curious townsfolk trampling the crime scene ensured evidence like fingerprints was lost forever. Did they have fingerprint evidence back then?
They had fingerprint evidence, I believe, in Jack the Ripper, or right around that time period. That was the early days.
Yeah, isn't it wild that got solved? Pretty much solved. Let's just call it. It got solved. Okay.
So it seems like it's solved.
The hauntings took root soon after. By the 1920s, neighbors reported hearing children's laughter or screams from the empty house, especially near the anniversary of the murders. When it became a museum in 1994, paranormal activity spiked. The Paranormal Files team's 2018 EVPs captured a child's voice pleading, "Don't hurt me."
Of course it did.
recorded in the attic where the killer may have waited. Museum caretaker Linda Cloud told The Atlantic in 2016 she'd seen curtains twist on windless nights while visitors felt sudden nausea in the children's room. 2011 Ghost Adventures episode, like we can't get enough of fucking Zak Bagans, documented a flashlight rolling unaided across a table, caught on camera, and the team leader, Mr. Zak Bagans himself, felt a heavy sadness he couldn't shake. These accounts spanning decades suggest the violence left an imprint too deep to fade. The crime scene was grim. Sheriff O.E. Wilkerson noted the killer covered mirrors with blankets and left a bacon slab on the kitchen table. Odd details that fueled theories. Suspects piled up. A drifter named Andrew Sawyer, seen with the bloody shirt that we mentioned, preacher George Kelly, who confessed and recanted, and even Josiah's brother-in-law Frank Johns over a business feud. Trials came and went. Kelly faced 2, both ending in acquittals, but no one was convicted. The investigation faltered. Evidence like bloody fingerprints was mishandled, and the small town's rumor mill spun out of control. By 1917, the case went cold, leaving I keep wanting to say Visalia, leaving Villisca with a wound that never healed. Then the hauntings began. So lead investigator Colin Browen told Rolling Stone he saw a door slam unprovoked, while skeptic debunker Dan, a YouTube investigator, argued it was wind and creaky hinges.
Who's
Debunker Dan?
No, before that.
Lead investigator Colin Browen.
Who's the lead investigator for? What did he say again?
Good grief, Christian. You're confusing me. He said, where am I? He told the Rolling Stone he saw a door slam unprovoked, while skeptic debunker Dan, a YouTube investigator, argued it was wind and creaky hinges.
Okay, so the first guy that I asked about, that must be a ghost hunter or something, because Rolling Stone wasn't around back then.
Yeah, this was in 2018.
Okay. All right, I get it now. It just threw me off. I'm like, Rolling Stone.
We're hopping around from when this story was covered in a few different areas,
okay.
And also YouTube wasn't around back then. It's fine. Anyway, visitors report cold spots near the attic where the killer may have hidden, and photos show orbs or dust. Spirits, say believers. No, I am a believer, and I can guarantee you 99.9% of the time you see any kind of orb in a photograph, it is dust.
True story.
There are some very convincing orb photos. 99.99999% of them are not.
Most of those, like a lot of photos, the first thing you have to check is something like dust or just the way the light. You know what I mean. You're more of a photographer than me. It's really simple for a human to mess up a picture.
That is very true. So then in 2004, a team from Ghost Adventures actually caught a shadow moving across a wall on infrared, adding to the lore, of course. The axe left at the scene, this is a little twisty, belonged to Josiah. A chilling hint the killer used what was at hand. Modern forensic psychologist Catherine Ramsland suggests a transient psychopath driven by rage, while paranormal author Troy Taylor ties it to a psychic imprint from the violence. The house stands today a time capsule of terror, drawing those who chase ghosts and justice alike. Skeptics argue the phenomena are tricks of an old house and human imagination, but the sheer volume of the reports, coupled with the brutality's lingering echo, leans towards something supernatural enduring in Villisca. Yes, interesting that we have a killer that went into the house without a weapon.
I've heard of that before, though. I think there was another famous axe murderer that
they just happened to find an axe in the house. I was like, oh, no,
they found it outside near where they cut the wood, and they took it inside. And I feel like that was in another country, though.
But is that at that point premeditated? Because if you're not prepared at all, can you even call it premeditated?
Premeditated is hard to prove, but maybe back then it wasn't as hard because.
I mean, you'd think it'd have to be, right? Unless it is just someone like this lady said, where it's just a transient psychopath coming through town, decide, hey, I'm just going to go axe up this family.
The randomness in that seems kind of strange, but it has happened. Mm-hmm. It still happens.
People do snap. There's an entire show dedicated to women snapping called Snapped that has been on TV for like 30 years, I think.
Yep. Very popular.
Yeah. That's very interesting. There's some.
Well, it's a very good educational thing for what to do if you're going to snap. If your man drives you crazy,
all you got to do is kill him.
Yeah.
It's that simple, folks.
We do not condone said killing.
Yeah, do whatever you want, At the end of the day, do whatever you want.
I approve of this message. I don't think I need to say I do not approve of this message.
Oh, well, you just said you do. So, Yeah, I want to get everyone else's opinions on the Villisca Axe Murders because not only is it very tragic and disturbing to think about, but it is just such a mystery that you're like, well, who knows, you know?
It's fascinating that so many ghost hunters have gone there. And with as many ghost hunters as there are, I just still feel like we should have better evidence on these hauntings.
I think, honestly, most of us are so turned off by the cringeworthy aspect of these shows that even when they get evidence, we're not even going to consider it.
Pretty much.
Like, I've seen plenty of quote-unquote evidence on ghost hunter shows, but I'm just like, number one, cringe as hell, guys. Every single one of you.
Yeah.
But secondly, I just don't... It's so hard in that type of situation where it's a entertainment show. Like, this is a reality show.
Yeah.
So is it a producer saying, hey, we got to catch something or people aren't going to watch? Or is it you genuinely finding evidence for the supernatural, you know?
The ones I've watched have not really had any evidence for the supernatural.
Yeah.
And that
it's a, you know what, the only ones that I will say that I do believe when they catch random stuff was the BuzzFeed Unsolved guys.
Okay.
Shane and Ryan.
But also random sounds and shit like that come about. Unless you have a very scientific setup when you're investigating these things, it's really hard to filter out what's just in the environment.
Yeah. Can't be replicated.
And if you have a ghost hunter running through the house terrified because something went bump in the night, that's even worse because then all the camera does is shake and the audio is horrible.
Classic.
So you can't tell anything. And they're like, oh, it was a ghost. Well, if you'd have shut up and stood still and kept the camera still, maybe we would have seen a ghost. But we haven't yet.
Yeah, but don't worry, folks. When Christian and I finally are broken free of the shackles of a 9-to-5 hellscape, we will release videos of us investigating places. And to much of our viewers' chagrin, 99% of the videos will have absolutely nothing in them. We'll be like, well, we didn't find a ghost, but we're going to be honest about it.
You know how every video is going to go? Well, Scott ran out of the house in terror again. But
Scott saw a ghost last night.
Let me walk you through.
Wow.
This is the noise that scared him. You tell me whether it's a ghost.
Christian, number one, your boy doesn't scare that easily, all right?
We'll see.
I have frightened myself via my own reflection several times, but
I just did it a couple days ago.
It really gets you when it happens.
Wasn't even, I was playing a video game.
Yes.
And I think a car went by on the street outside, but the light came in through the kitchen window and I saw it on the corner of the TV. I was like, what the?
Like, who is that?
And I looked around. I was like, you dumbass.
Oh, it's me. Right.
It wasn't me. I thought somebody was walking next to me. That cat that ran through your yard today when Atlas and I were out there. And I was like, what the? I thought some wild animal was in the yard. I was about to go attack it. Save Atlas.
Classic. All right, let's close this out. Finally, let's meet the Smurls.
Great name.
Of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, a working class family whose lives unraveled over 15 years of alleged demonic torment.
Do you think if we don't say alleged demonic torment, do you think Satan would sue?
Yes.
It sounds like him. He's probably got a lawyer on retainer. Proof of Satan.
So anyhow, it started in 1974 when Jack and Janet Smurl, their daughters and Jack's parents, moved into a duplex on Chase Street. At first, it was small stuff. A stain that wouldn't paint over, tools vanishing. By 1977, it escalated, foul smells like rotting meat, footsteps pacing empty rooms, and Jack's mother, Mary, hearing voices cursing her name. Damn you, Mary. Then it got physical. Let's get physical. That's fine. Anyway.
How do you even know that song?
Christian, I think we've established so many times on this podcast that my catalog of music is very wide. I worked McDonald's for 6 years. You know what songs they play exclusively at McDonald's? The hits, the classic, the disco, all like literally everything you can think of.
One of my first loves, Olivia Newton-John.
Wow. So Janet claimed she was yanked from bed in 1985. Jack said he was also Jack said
who yanked Jack?
Yeah, he was also yanked. Turns out Jack said a shadowy figure pinned him down. Oh yeah, its breath hot and rancid.
That was Mom.
Wow. Their daughter Dawn saw objects, books, a lamp float midair before crashing down. The disturbances grew relentless. Janet told the Scranton Times in 1986 she'd wake to find claw marks on her arms, appearing overnight with no explanation. Jack described a night in 1985 when he saw a black mass hover over his bed, its edges pulsing before it darted through the wall into his parents' side of the duplex. The couple's daughters, Dawn and Heather, reported waking to their mattresses shaking violently as if something beneath was trying to throw them off. Even guests weren't spared. Janet's sister Karen visited in 1985 and fled after hearing guttural whispers from the basement, later telling People magazine she'd never return. The Smurl's priest, Father Robert McKenna, performed blessings only to report his crucifix trembling in his hands during one session. A detail he shared with the Warrens. God, and they're back. They're back. They're back, folks.
They're like cockroaches after the apocalypse.
Small with 6 legs.
And just never go away.
Oh, that too. Anyway, the Warrens' arrival in 1986 turned the case into a national spectacle. Lorraine, during a recorded seance, claimed she saw a horned figure manifest in the living room, its presence so oppressive she nearly fainted. Ed, armed with holy water and a tape recorder, captured what he called demonic laughter echoing from the walls. Audio later played on a 1986 The People Next Door TV special. The Smurl said the entity retaliated. Jack was allegedly assaulted by an unseen force in a chair as his daughters watched in horror, while Janet heard pig-like squeals from inside the plaster. Nightmare fuel, as if the house itself were alive. A neighbor, Mary Owen, told the Philadelphia Inquirer she'd seen the Smurl's window glow red one night, a sight that left her praying for their safety. Didn't want to pick up a phone? The family endured 4 attempted exorcisms, none fully sanctioned, yet each seemed to provoke worse attacks. The Smurls went public in 1986 begging for help. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived, labeling it a Class A infestation by a demon possibly drawn by the duplex's history, built in 1896, with rumors of a death on site decades prior. During a 1986 seance, Lorraine said she felt pure evil, and Ed claimed a rosary burned his hand. The family reported worse after. They fled in 1989, but not before their story hit The Haunted, a 1991 TV movie, and a book by Robert Curran.
I feel like I've watched that movie.
You probably did. Neighbors backed them. One told the Scranton Times she'd seen lights flicker oddly next door, though others called it nonsense. Psychologist Robert Baker, in a 1987 Skeptical Inquirer article, suggested sleep paralysis and stress. Jack had brain surgery in the 70s. Janet battled depression. The Warrens' involvement raised red flags, and critics like Joe Nickel, once again, coming in hot, accused them of hyping cases for fame. Yet the Smurls never profited much, and Jack told the Washington Post in 1986, quote, "I'd rather be dead than lie about this." He immediately died. No. The Catholic Church investigated, but found no grounds for an exorcism. Today the house is occupied, its current owners reporting peace, though they've banned paranormal probes. The believer's case grows with the details. The Smurl's consistency recounting the same events to police, priests, and reporters lends a little bit of credibility, as does their lack of financial gain. They lived modestly even after the publicity. Jack's father, John, told the New York Times in 1986 he'd seen a chair slide across the kitchen unprovoked, a story he stuck to until his death. The Warrens' recordings, while dismissed by some as static, contain distinct vocal patterns to believers' ears.
Well, that's good sentence.
There you go. Skeptics lean on psychological strain, but the physical phenomena, marks, movement, sounds reported by multiple witnesses tip the scale towards a curious supernatural siege.
The skeptics think that?
No, skeptics lean on psychological strain, but the physical and all that fun stuff is kind of a mark in the box of the believers there. The Smurl's dog, a German shepherd, refused to enter certain rooms, growling at nothing.
Because they had a Terminator on the premises.
Was it a demon, a delusion, or a family pushed to the brink?
I just told you what it was. Arnold Schwarzenegger playing the Terminator.
Their story lingers, a raw snapshot of fear and faith. So were the Smurls under demonic attack, or was this a tragic case of psychological strain mistaken for the supernatural? Well, Christian, I know what you're going to say.
Proof of Satan.
And I think you might be right here.
I always wonder, well, you got all these witnesses that talk about things moving.
I do.
I just need to see more of it on camera. Now, I know going back to 86 is rough.
It's a little harder, yeah.
Nowadays, you see a lot of that. Unfortunately, now we don't trust people at all.
Well, that's because you also have people that genuinely make hoaxes for YouTube,
right,
for profit.
Exactly.
So it's hard. It's a really, and TikTok now, don't even get me started on that garbage, So it's really hard to, you can see a wild video and you'd be like, oh, wow, I guess this proves everything. But in reality, There's some very talented editors out there that can, little green screen suit. I used to have one of those, little green man. Yeah, you can make it look like someone's being dragged across the floor or anything you want at this point, I mean, hell. And now we're entering the AI verse where it's like, okay, I guess now we can't believe anything. Literally anything you see. Good luck.
That's how Satan gets you. If you can't believe anything is the truth, you can't believe.
If you can't believe anything's the truth, you believe everything's the truth. Or something like that.
Yeah, you know what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like you said, back then, a little harder to get your hands on cameras. Now it's a little too easy to get your hands on cameras. So there's really no happy medium, and everyone's just screwed, okay? Are you happy? We'll see you next week. No. I don't know, man. These are all fairly older stories.
Here's what I'd like to know from our listeners. Have you guys seen stuff flying through the room or getting moved?
Yeah.
And it seemingly has no reason for moving. Because then I'd feel a little bit better if our listeners had experienced something like that.
We had someone in studio talking about something like that.
Right. And that I just feel like a lot of times there's a reason for that, but because we can't trust anybody anymore that posts videos, tell us about your experience with something going bump in the night and moving across the room or wherever.
True. We want to hear those stories. And, they may sound mundane, like, oh, the chair moved by itself. Ooh. But, I mean, I personally, and I've always said this, I feel like the smaller things that kind of, quote unquote, prove the existence of like a, other dimension or spiritual realm or whatever are the ones that are the most believable. Like I felt someone literally grab my shoulder. I turned around, there's no one there. You're like, oh, that's not super over the top exciting, but you're like, damn, that's kind of weird,
My sister had some weird experiences with toys going off without being turned on after my brother-in-law died.
Yeah. It's just small stuff like that, it kind of makes you wonder. You're like, what's going on out here in this wild world that we live in?
Right.
So, I don't know, you guys have heard what we think. Now, what do you think? Give us your thoughts. Send them in. A comment wherever you're listening. Whatever. Be sure to make Christian say the weirdest things you can possibly think of at holler.baby/thefreakydeaky. And next week, we're going to be getting into some... I've titled the episode Notorious HOA. But it's not about... So I might change it.
Is that B.I.G.'s
it was kind of
brother?
Yeah, it was kind of a joke. Didn't really land. It's hard to make jokes in titles. Or Home Sweet Haunting. But it's pretty much...
I'm on my way.
Sure. It covers some pretty creepy haunted houses that have popped up in the States over the years. So if you're into haunted houses, much like we've kind of touched on in this episode, now this is more true crime, but a lot of it was houses. Damn it. I doubled up.
No, it was Satan.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Proof of Satan.
Anyway, we'll see you guys next week where we're getting into some truly terrifying haunted house experiences that you may not have heard of, but you probably have. I don't know. Who knows, really? It's fine. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bigfoot is stalking by your window. Dogman is scratching at your door. Ghosties are walking up and down your halls at night. And the Hat Man is coming back for more. Your name is Christian. You love a can of beans. And you're the wettest blanket skeptic this world has ever seen. You're almost always wrong. It's quite an impressive streaky. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the Freaky Deaky. Your name is Christian. Your name's ironically, because the only belief you have can be found in a can of beans. You're almost never right, and now you get roasted weekly. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the Freaky Deaky. Also ghosts exist, just an FYI. Aliens are feeling blue. The Ouija demon's lonely because they believe in you. ghosts exist, just an FYI. Aliens are feeling blue. The Ouija demon's lonely because they believe in you. Your name is Christian, your name's ironically, because the only belief you have can be found in a can of beans. You're almost never right, and now you get roasted weekly. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the freaky deaky. Also, ghosts exist, just an FYI. Aliens are feeling blue. The Ouija demon's lonely